Nelson Mandela, a revolutionary anti-apartheid philanthropist and politician, and one of the greatest leaders of the world, was the president of South Africa from 1994 to 1999. From being sentenced to life imprisonment in 1963 to a Nobel Prize for ending apartheid in his country in 1993, Nelson Mandela has experienced it all. Regarded as the savior of democracy, Winston Churchill is the great mind behind the victory of Britain over the Nazis. Born in an aristocratic family, he served the National Army of Britain and then later on became the Prime Minister in 1940. Amongst his many honors are being elected as Prime Minister again in 1951 and a Nobel Prize in Literature. Alexander the Great, often known as the man who conquered the world, is widely regarded as the greatest military leader of all time. His leadership style, great presence of mind, battles, vision are still being praised in history books of today. He was born in 356 BC and controlled the greatest empire in history by the young age of 33, stretching from Greece to Egypt to India. He was king of Macedonia, and he was maybe the finest military leader that ever lived. He was unbeaten in combat until he died of malaria in 323 BC. His strengths were his insight, vision, and global influence, as well as a strong military. Kofi Annan was a highly revered Ghanaian diplomat. From 1997 to 2006, he successfully led the United Nations as the 7th Secretary General. Annan fought the AIDS pandemic in Africa, and he actively worked to erase social issues in the world. In 2006, Kofi and the UN were awarded a Nobel Peace Prize for their hard work. Wherever there are humans, there will be social beings. And wherever there are social beings, they will always come together to form groups and organizations. According to Austrian-American management consultant, educator, and author Peter Drucker, whenever there are organizations, only 3 things happen naturally: friction, confusion, and underperformance. Everything else requires leadership. There's a saying that everything rises and falls with leadership. If this is so, and governance is truly that important, then we must ask ourselves if it is possible to teach leadership, and if so, what essential skills should be taught in school. The Tertiary Education Trust Fund has pondered this matter since inception. The intervention agency desires that the Nigerian people enjoy the very best quality of leadership and believes a healthy investment in tertiary education is the best way to achieve this. These are the chronicles of the journey to institutionalize research and development in Nigeria. Hello, and welcome to this edition of TETFund, The Paradigm Shift. I am Stanley Bentu. After 4 years of university, polytechnic, or college of education, one generally expects to be awarded a piece of paper that will open the doors of their profession to them. Now, that piece of paper symbolizes a degree which crowns all of their effort and enables them to further their dream chasing. Interestingly, however, finishing college does not just culminate in a title. Those who are successful come out with a certain level of skills that education instills into one's subconsciousness. Examples of it are time management, organization, accountability, persistence, and many, many more. But most importantly, education single-handedly imparts leadership qualities. Now, TETFund recognizes this opportunity, and that's why, as part of its paradigm shift, it has invested a lot of its intervention in governance, social development, and internal security, all matters related to leadership. In fact, TETFund not only singled this crucial aspect out as a thematic area of its Research and Development Standing Committee, it also established a center of excellence at the University of Abuja to cater to this. Now, without good leadership, Nigeria simply cannot attain the status of a developed country. But how does governance work? And how effective has leadership been to other countries? Let's find out in this report.
In 1990, the Rwandan Patriotic Front, that's the RPF, a rebel group composed of nearly 500,000 Tutsi refugees, invaded northern Rwanda from their base in Uganda. Though there had been historical tensions between the Hutus and the Tutsis, two ethnic groups based in Rwanda, this marked the official beginning of the Rwandan Civil War. The rebel group condemned the Hutu-dominated government for failing to democratize and confront the problems facing these refugees. Neither side was able to gain a decisive advantage in the war, but by 1992 it had weakened President Juvenal Habyarimana's authority. Mass demonstrations forced him into a coalition with the domestic opposition and eventually to sign the 1993 Arusha Accords with the RPF. The ceasefire ended on the 6th of April 1994 when Habyarimana's plane was shot down near Kigali airport, killing him. The shooting down of the plane served as a catalyst for the Rwandan genocide, which began within a few hours. Over the course of approximately 100 days, between 500,000 and 1 million Tutsi and politically moderate Hutu were killed in a well-planned attacks on the orders of the interim government. The international response to the genocide was limited, with major powers reluctant to strengthen the already overstretched UN peacekeeping force. At this point in history, you would be forgiven to have written Rwanda off as another African wasteland soaked in death and destruction. Rwanda was a failed state by any measure. The Tutsi RPF restarted their offensive and eventually took control methodically, gaining control of the whole country. When the RPF took over, approximately 2 million Hutu fled to neighboring countries, in particular Zaire, which is now modern-day Congo, fearing reprisals. This didn't happen. Instead, within Rwanda, a number of reconciliation and justice processes began, with the establishment of the International Criminal Tribunal, for Rwanda that's the ICTR, and the reintroduction of Gacaca, a traditional village court system. Enter Paul Kagame, the military leader of the RPF and vice president since 1994, who took office upon the resignation of his predecessor, Pastor Bizimungu, in 2000. According to Gatete Ringabo, an independent analyst and human rights lawyer based in Kigali, the Rwandan capital, when Paul Kagame became Rwanda's president in 2000, he inherited a country that had been torn apart by the genocide. To rebuild it, he had to rely on the most uneducated guerrilla fighters and a handful of ill-trained cadets. Even the most optimistic of analysts doubted his chances. But 22 years later, the country is stable, prosperous, unified, and in large part reconciled. Social services such as education, healthcare, housing, and livestock are provided to the needy with no distinction of ethnicity or region of origin, two forms of discrimination that characterized the governments leading up to the genocide against the Tutsi, which Kagame, as a leader of the Rwandan Patriotic Front, brought to an end. 25 years after the genocide, the wounds are slowly healing. Survivors still see Kagame as a guarantor of their existence. He pardoned the perpetrators and set the country on a journey to unity and reconciliation. Kagame has been tough in his style of governance, inflexible on corruption, populism, and divisive speech. Politicians with hate-charged rhetoric have consistently faced harsh sentences and lengthy prison terms. Speech is regulated to prohibit ethnic prejudice, while democracy was trimmed and tailored to the peculiar predicament facing the Rwandan people. A new unified country had to be built with the same people, killers and their victims living side by side with unity of purpose, the betterment of their village, their district, and ultimately their country. Outside of Africa, however, Kagame raises mixed feelings, with human rights groups classifying him as an authoritarian leader who curtails press and political freedoms and presides over an undemocratic nation. International analysts and champions of democracy have not embraced Kagame's atypical approach, often assessing Rwandan politics through a Western lens and thus missing the complexities of governing post-genocide. As a result, they may have missed what is arguably the most edifying case study in national transformation of the last 25 years. Rwandan mothers receive ante- and postnatal healthcare, and maternal mortality ratios in the country have decreased by 77% between 2000 and 2013. Newborns are vaccinated, the cities are clean, and people can walk safely at night. Ministers no longer require personal security details. Your security will be guaranteed like that of other Rwandan citizens, they were told. Some outsiders seem concerned that Kagame has not groomed a successor, and although there are no crown princes in Rwanda, the president has chosen to groom thousands of young men and women to lead the country into the future. The average age of his cabinet is 40 years old, and women make up 50% of the cabinet, 61% of the parliament, and 50% of the Supreme Court judges. Progress is visible. Kagame's Rwanda is still Africa's most inspiring success story, and this is all due to governance, social development, and internal security.
Well, if that doesn't inspire you, then I don't know what will. Considering how cynical and self-loathing a few Nigerians are about their own country, just knowing that Rwanda was in a much more deplorable condition way back in 1994 and has somehow managed to make itself an internationally relevant nation in the knowledge economy community should signal to us that with quality leadership, which we can grow right here at home, by ourselves in our public tertiary institutions, Nigeria can become a major global economic powerhouse. After all, we do have so much more going for us. So, how is TETFund linking governance to tertiary education? Well, this next report tells us more.
The World Bank says higher education is instrumental in fostering growth, reducing poverty, and boosting shared prosperity. It benefits not just the individual, but the entire educational system. A highly skilled workforce with lifelong access to a solid post-secondary education is a prerequisite for innovation and growth. Well-educated people are more employable and productive, earn higher wages, and cope better with economic shocks. Tertiary education benefits not just the individual, but society as a whole. Graduates of tertiary education are more environmentally conscious, they have healthier habits, and they have a higher level of civic participation. Also, increased tax revenues from higher earnings, healthier children, and reduced family sizes all build stronger nations. In short, tertiary education institutions prepare individuals not only by providing them with adequate and relevant job skills, but also by preparing them to be active members of their communities and societies. This means that higher education institutions are where we can build the best specimen for governance and public leadership.
We have a responsibility now as a university to help this nation to find the kind of leadership that it needs. And believe me, universities have to do that. Anywhere in the world is universities that leads the way. And I think what TETFund has done is to actually realize that this must be a strategy to make all these investments make meaning. And you know, for now and for a long time to come, University of Abuja will begin to mobilize. We say the problem of Nigeria is a problem of leadership. People have said it. I also say it's a problem of followership. You know, so we want to take this now and run with it and look at governance. Why are we where we are? When Nigeria was a colonial era, what were the issues? Issues of governance. Why did we go the length we went up to the challenge to colonization, to end colonization? What did we make of it? Leadership, military. People say, oh, the crisis has been military. Now, civilian. Oh, you know, civilian is the problem. So many, too expensive, you know, legislative. We say so many things. We talk too much. Now, universities will do what they need to do. And University of Abuja, governance and leadership, we will be able to focus and help this nation to grow.
Practicing anything mildly important like golf or football without training is inadvisable. The fact that so many of our leaders are practicing leadership without training should alarm us. The fundamentals of leadership should be taught to our youth from a very young age.
Catch them young. How do we prepare leaders for future? Some people say leaders are born, but we have nations of the world like Singapore that identify right from elementary school those who are going to be national leaders and train them for this purpose.
The primary duty of government is to guarantee the security of the lives of its citizens. It is common knowledge that Nigeria has for the past 12 years struggled with violent crimes and insurgency on a level not seen since the civil war ended in 1970. Kidnapping, terrorism, and insurgency are crimes that were not prevalent in the country. As such, we have had to evolve in response to these emerging threats. Because current leaders are learning as they go along, the leaders of the future who are currently in the tertiary education space are the ones who may hold the keys to a permanent end to these challenges, but only if investment is made in research and development to provide the needed information.
There are a number of people that are going into research and development in various areas that would impact positively on the challenges on securities, providing solutions, but they had been working in silos. If the military, for example, requires a particular item or resources, it is important that we found out that there could be different laboratories and different areas that have such issues, and to understand the real needs of the Nigerian defense architecture, we could also engage the active research participants from the universities, polytechnics and other areas, so that they could provide solutions to this. But this has to be done in a manner to which it will not jeopardize the national security, in the sense that it has to be on commission basis, to say that, okay, your lab has capacities in this area, or your group is working on this area for non-military, for non-hardware event. Can you look at this situation and provide the nation, solutions in that respect?
Young people live in a diverse world characterized by great pressures and responsibilities, changing technology, and the challenges in the job market. They are the next generation of leaders in our workspace and in our communities. For a country to succeed, we need to empower them to develop their talents and capabilities to become agents of change. One way to prepare them for this is to teach them about governance and public leadership from a very young age. Tertiary education is the key.
Education is at the foundation of it all. It's cross-cutting. All the other 12 thematic groups are founded on education, from energy to infrastructure, defense, governance, and all the rest. It begins from education. And from all what they are doing, all of this will end up, a lot of it will end up in curriculum reviews and the way paradigm shift, part of what you see in the field and part of the problems we are complaining about in virtually all the areas, you can trace them to the quality and type of education that we are offering. The shift now, if you notice in the universities, the people, universities exist for several years. No, professors don't have patents because that's not the orientation. They publish to be promoted, but now we want every research in the university to be needs driven, to be of the problem-solving type.
People have different temperaments, and different temperaments can all be leaders. They would just do it in different ways. So, we cannot identify a leader by what temperament a person may have. But there are certain things that are common about leadership. And luckily, most of those things can be taught. What we need as part of the paradigm shift for good governance is an emphasis on characterological development. If you're a leader, you know where you're going, and that's the first thing. Secondly, you have to be able to communicate that effectively to all of those who follow you. Thirdly, to govern effectively, your followers have to trust you. So you have to be honest, have integrity, and to keep your word. And it really may not matter whether the words that you speak are harsh or gentle, as long as you do what you say that you will do. And finally, where you're going as a leader has to have some value to your followers. Otherwise, why would anyone want to go along with you? Well, no disrespect to Rwanda, but I will be much happier when Nigeria is Africa's most inspiring success story. And our public tertiary institutions, with the support of TETFund, can achieve that. And that is the paradigm shift. Join us again on the next episode of the program. But until then, thank you for stopping by. Good night.